We have 7 minutes to go on my watch. I see some hands here. Please, could you be very precise? 2 minutes.
Just a very quick comment, and from the perspective of relatively young institutions, and the relationship between the chairman and the director in relevant to those institutions. This is something which we discussed yesterday also, that typically the chairman who establishes the institution, a young institution, say, which is 5 or 10 years old, is the person with vision or passion and with professional decades of experience who establishes the institution. And so it is natural that the person's vision, his passion comes to the institution also. However, it's very important there for the director and the senior staff to have a clear demarcation of roles and responsibilities. Because while it is good to have a chairman with such stature, it should not be a day-to-day interference in running of the institution, and because that's the job of the director and the senior staff. So, and they are the ones who have to build their careers with the institution, because the chairman has lived his life or her life. So I think that's a comment for the younger institution I felt is very important to. One just quick question to Shekhar on you raised the point about cash is king. Now, most institutions, we are on the business of raising funding for our projects. Now, there are some areas which are relatively easy to attract funding, some research domains, in some others which are not so easy to research to attract funding, but which are nevertheless important for the institution's vision and mission. So while we pursue such research areas for example, with TTI support is one example, but it does create within the institution some tension which have to be managed, because some research domains attract funding easily, some are not so. Is that something which has been experienced, and how do you handle those issues?
Thank you. Last question, Chambiano.
Merci. Bon, j'ai tout juste une petite question. Quels pourraient être les avantages et les dangers éventuels de constituer, donc je parle en français, donc je disais quels sont les avantages et les dangers de constituer un conseil de sages d'anciens directeurs, de membres fondateurs d'un institut pour servir de modérateur dans les conflits qui peuvent naître entre les différents organes de l'Institut.
Okay. Merci. You have a quick question, you? Yeah, it's done.
It's better if the first person
yeah, they did.
Repeat the question because they had a problem with the...
Oh, ok. Ok. Tu peux répéter la question, parce qu'ils avaient des problèmes, ils n'ont pas entendu.
Merci. Je disais que quels pourraient être les avantages et les dangers de constituer un conseil de sages d'anciens directeurs, de membres fondateurs de l'Institut pour servir donc en quelque sorte de modérateur dans les conflits éventuels entre les différents organes donc, de l'institution.
Yeah, quick, 1 minute.
Thank you. My question is for Maureen. Most boards meet only a few times in a year. And at each time, they meet only for a few days. For example, if a board meets 4 times in a year, 3 days at a time, that's 12 days. That leaves about 353 days in the year for non-board activities. My question is this: how should that relationship be managed between the CEO and the board, during the period they are not meeting, are there specific strategies one should adopt to be able to manage this? I'm a new CEO, and I've not had the privilege of having a board. The board was dissolved, and it has not been reconstituted. That's why I'm asking.
So this question about what to do when you have not fully externally funded work, it's a challenge. I think that's what endowment support does for you, that you have resources that you can fall back on, which is why the most prominent think tanks in the world have huge endowments, and the CEOs of those organizations have seen the building up of that endowment as a major task for themselves. And you look around, including Nancy and Strobe Talbot at Brookings, two of the world's best known, or amongst the best known think tanks in the English-speaking world, have raised their endowments very, very dramatically over the years. So I think that's clearly, and it's not an area, certainly in our part of the world in South Asia, that a lot of attention has been paid to, in part because most of the think tanks that exist, perhaps with the exception of yours, certainly mine, have umbilical support from the government. There's a constant lifeline of assured support, whether through Mr. Thoret's organization or through the University Grants Commission or other such direct funding from ministries of government, which have seen themselves as needing this kind of independent research and this kind of analytical capacity out there. So that would be my suggestion, but I would certainly at the same time urge us all not to give up on that aspect of our work. It's tremendously important. It is part of the mandate that the government gives you, or society gives you, and doesn't tax you on your income. I mean, the non-profit nature of what we are comes at a responsibility that we need to pay back to society. So certainly a lot of the work that we have to do, which no client would fund, data collection, for example, we have to think of ways in which we can, in some cases, monetize the information and be able to sell it at cost so that we are able to recover our investments. And in general, find funders like the ones that fund DTI, who have a larger public purpose in mind besides just projecting a name or projecting a particular need for a client. This issue of the original founding fathers or mothers and what we do about them, I have myself many years back dealt with that situation for an institution that is now quite prominent in India, but which I had the unpleasant task of deciding whether we pull the plug and let the institution die, precisely because it was so much in the thralls of the original founding father, and there was great difficulty for that institution to become free. And it is important. It's not an easy process. The individual or set of individuals have really invested their entire lives, thinking and career, and sometimes money as well, in these ventures. So I think it needs a very delicate balance and a great deal of conversation. One possible approach to this could be to, and that's part of some of the notes that Diakalia had circulated, self-assessment. For an institution to appoint a blue ribbon panel of 3 or 4 wise women and men who will be an external assessment of the institution. And that should have as a specific terms of reference transition, leadership transition. And what is very often difficult for a CEO to say or for other funders to say might well be said much more easily by such an external panel in a constructive way as the need for transition in leadership. I think that's all that I had. Thanks.
last comment?
Solamente sobre el mismo punto, en cuanto a la gente sabia, ya lo decía muy bien mi antecesor, la renovación de cuadros es fundamental. Algunas organizaciones tienden a hacer renovación de cuadros de manera más rápida y otras son mucho más conservadoras en hacerlo, como el caso de mi organización. Pero en todo caso me parece que es saludable tratar de incorporando nuevas personas y que a la luz de las nuevas realidades que ellas van imponiendo y van aprendiendo a lo largo de su práctica de investigación o su práctica en el campo de la incidencia, puedan ir modificando la visión de la organización sin tener que sacrificar sus principios y valores. Es decir, los principios y valores pueden mantenerse, pero sí definitivamente la organización debe ser capaz de adaptarse permanentemente a los nuevos retos que nos plantea el contexto. Y lógicamente una organización que no se renueva, no importa tanto tal vez a qué ritmo, es una organización que está confinada a morir.
Thank you. Okay, to this very practical question about the development of a new board, that how many times should a board meet, how long, how to deal with the fact they're together when you add it up, not very many days a year. And so hence, what should the communication be between the CEO and the chair of the board in between meetings? First of all, I would think 3-day meetings, just on the face of it and imagining myself doing it, is quite a long time to meet. 4 times a year is not actually bad. It's what they're doing at each of those meetings, and it's how it fits within your own planning cycle. If you've got a strategy and you know what you ought to have achieved at the end of each quarter, then that's not bad. I would look at having them together for 3 days, though that seems long to me. I think it's very important to establish a routine of communication in between meetings. And whether it's, and this depends on the people. I mean, my chair when I was in David's job, and I were back and forth all the time. With the chair I have now, it's much more structured. It's not that free and easy back and forth. That depends on the people. But I do think that it's important to establish and to sit down and have a chat with the board chair and saying, look, I don't want to be, I'm not asking you for advice all the time, but I know you want to know what we're doing, so let's establish a time. The other thing we do is we have a newsletter which we put out, an electronic newsletter once a month. We make sure that the members of our board are on the mailing list for that too, so that it's not done specially for them. We used to do something specially, but I said that's a waste of time. Anything we're doing is in our monthly newsletter. Make sure they get that too. But on the relationship with the chair, I think it's important to establish the modality up front. And then if you've got a new board, we don't have time to get into it because we're out of time, but where do your members come from? Does your board have a nominating committee so that you're constantly looking ahead and saying, oh, their term's going to be ending. That means we need this kind of a person. We better start thinking now about who they will be. And then just to agree with the comment about the utility of an external evaluation, and ideally, not just when you see that you're in difficulty, although it's necessary then, but something that's ongoing. And I think that hopefully, and as I'm on the advisory board of this initiative, I'll be most interested in feedback as to whether the approach to evaluation that the TTI is taking is actually useful for you as managers, because my feeling is if evaluation is not useful to the board of an organization or useful to the managers, and it's only useful in some obscure way to the donors, then it's not much use. Mm-hmm. So I'll be happy to hear feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Carmen. And thank you, Shekhar. And we started late, and we are finishing just on time. We have spent 2 hours, and you will agree with me that thanks to their background, they have really provided us with a very practical insight for actions in our different organizations. And also you have make very good comment also on practices you have now that need to be, in some cases, improved. So we'd like to thank the panel and thank you to